United front. Eurozone group agrees Greek rescue package and a series of measures to protect the single currency from speculators. A deal for Downing Street. After Britain's inconclusive election, negotiations between the Lib Dems and the Conservatives to form a majority get underway. Plugging the leak. BP lowers its Superdome down to the seabed to try to stop more oil spewing into the Gulf of Mexico. And in sport, third time lucky for Barcelona as they beat CSK Moscow at last to join Olympiacos Piraeus in the Basketball EuroLeague finals. Eurozone leaders have formally approved €110 billion of EU IMF emergency loans for Greece at a summit in Brussels on the crisis facing the single currency. The 16-nation group also says it'll have special measures ready before markets open on Monday to protect the euro from speculators. The Eurogroup president did not seek to minimise the dangers.
We are considering that the whole euro area is under attack, and we have to formulate from now until Sunday night a coherent answer of the whole euro area and of the whole European Union to these attacks against the euro area, which are not justified.
The group had been criticised over its slowness to react to the Greek crisis. Germany showed particular reluctance. That prompted financial markets to pound other Eurozone nations with high deficits or debts, such as Spain and Portugal.
The need to safeguard the Eurozone goes beyond Greece's problems. That is why the decisions we have taken show our common determination to work together, and in doing so, safeguard the stability of our common currency in Europe, but also safeguard the stability of Europe itself.
Among measures in the pipeline are a support fund for Eurozone members and a mechanism to prevent the current situation from contaminating other countries. Details are expected to be announced tomorrow.
Back in January, Greek Prime Minister George Papandreou and European Council President Herman Van Rompuy looked relaxed as they met in Athens. Alarm bells were already ringing as evidence of the country's serious economic problems mounted. Van Rompuy, however, seemed confident that Greece's growth and stability plan would heal its hemorrhaging economy.
I'm confident that the Greek government is already taking the necessary further steps to address the situation.
Less than a month later, Greece was on the brink of bankruptcy and approached its European partners for a lifeline. Leaders held an informal summit to discuss how to keep Athens afloat and avoid the euro from sinking. Despite the seriousness of the situation, no concrete action was taken.
We fully support the efforts of the Greek government and their commitment to do whatever is necessary, including adopting additional measures to ensure that the ambitious targets set in the stability programme for 2010 and the following years are met.
Fast forward to March and yet another summit was held. Finally, after months of wrangling, Eurozone leaders agreed a rescue package of bilateral loans in conjunction with the International Monetary Fund. By now, Greece's financial instability had begun to infect other countries within the EU. 11 years after its creation, the euro faces an unprecedented crisis. European leaders are now finalising details of the bailout, which they hope will restore market confidence in both the single currency and Greece. After the umpteenth crisis summit, it'll be interesting to know what they make of this in Tallinn, because Estonia will become the 17th member of the Eurozone when it joins at the end of the year. How will the people of this small Baltic state feel when they join the 330 million other Europeans who have euros in their pockets?
Euronews.
Can you tell us where we are with the negotiations?
Talks are underway to form a new government in Britain after its inconclusive general election on Thursday. All eyes are on Nick Clegg. He's being touted as kingmaker, although his Liberal Democrats only took 57 seats. The Conservatives, who won 306 seats, are still short of the 326 they need for a parliamentary majority. Leader David Cameron's openly invited Clegg to form an alliance, but the two parties have widely diverging views on issues such as Europe and electoral reform. Prime Minister Gordon Brown, whose Labour Party now only has 258 seats, has also offered to do a deal with the Lib Dems. But a Lib-Lag pact still wouldn't add up to a majority. For a more in-depth analysis of what the results of these elections mean and what repercussions they're likely to have, we turn to our political analyst in London, Keith Graves.
Normally by lunchtime on the day after a British general election, the public know who the next Prime Minister is going to be. But not this time. Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister, is refusing to move out. He and his party were humiliated by the electorate, but he says he has a duty at this difficult time for this country to stay on at the moment, even though he can't form a government without the help from a lot of other parties who show no inclination to help him. David Cameron, he is desperate to get into Downing Street. He's already said he will do all sorts of deals, he'll make all sorts of compromises, break all sorts of promises he made during the election campaign to try and woo other parties, smaller parties, to try and help him to get into Downing Street. And he really wants to woo Nick Clegg. It may be that we won't know at this time until after the weekend who will be the next Prime Minister. And this is a time when politicians, businessmen, bankers all agree that it is very important that we have a stable government here in Britain, that there is very, very quick action to try and help the economy. And so there is a period of enormous instability just when the country doesn't need it. And one more point, one thing that is almost certain, whoever forms the next government, it won't be very stable, it won't be very secure, and we may have to go through all this again in the next few months, certainly sometime next year.
How are the UK elections being seen elsewhere in Europe? To talk about that, we cross over to Berlin and Dr. Danielle Schwarzer. She's head of research of the EU Integration Division at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs in Berlin. The European Commission has been critical of the scale of Britain's public deficit, standing at some 12%. What does this uncertain election result mean for the British citizens and for Europe?
This means a state of political insecurity in the UK and also insecurity for its partners in the EU. They'll be watching closely what reforms the next British government carries out and if the country will become the next victim of financial speculators, creating a similar insecurity to those of whom we've been speaking about daily, Greece and maybe Spain and Portugal.
David Cameron's Tories picked up the most votes in this election, and they've promised to wrestle powers back from Brussels to London. How would this work in reality?
The new Lisbon Treaty, which has been in force since December, provides for the first time the possibility to legally withdraw from the EU. This means that the next British government is free to think about leaving the EU completely. But this is a scenario that I believe is unlikely. I think that many things that David Cameron has said during the campaign on a possible UK withdrawal will not be pursued.
Romania is set for a wave of strikes after the government announced cuts to public sector wages and state pensions. Unions vow they'll protest a move to reduce salaries by 25%. They're also angry pensions and unemployment benefits will be slashed by 15%. I'm not very happy at all with these measures. Nobody is happy, in fact. But how can we argue? Yesterday, when I heard all of this on TV, I was very upset. But there's nothing we can do. The cuts will be made effective from this June. These measures were probably absolutely necessary. I guess it's a good thing to do. The cuts were agreed as part of a €20 billion rescue deal with the IMF, EU and World Bank. This man explained that the 15% cuts to his pension would leave him struggling to make ends meet. After 32 years of work, what can I do? Everything is so expensive. Fuel is expensive. I don't know how we're going to live. It's very bad. The IMF wants Romania to close its public deficit, which stood at 7.2% of GDP last year. The target they've set is 5.9%.